guys in the dark. So I remember the first time that I was online on tour, almost giddy from excitement of exploring the unknown. I navigated to the hidden wiki page with its extensive link catalog. I visited some online gun and drug stores, and then called it a day. Exciting, but nothing out of the ordinary. But things got messy the very next time that I opened up Tor. I came upon an anonymous chat site that anyone could use by signing up. The guys there seemed really nice. I told them that I was new to the whole Tor thing, and they took their time to explain to me the basics and how everything worked around the network. "Take it easy," one of them typed back. "So what are you looking for?" "I've been hearing stories about the dark web, so I came to check out what the deal was. But it's all pretty mellow," I responded back. I guess I was expecting some surprises, but drugs and guns are all that are here. I had given my honest opinion to him. "You're a nice chap. If you like surprises, follow this link," and then he typed, and he signed out. The link took me to a private forum, sort of like Reddit, but more basic. The first thread was an extensive discussion on how to make cocaine from locally available substances. It also talked about different other unconventional types of highs, like injecting yourself with a mixture of Clorox and ground sugar. A user reported that the high was so potent, 12 hours later, he was still feeling it. Another thread discussed the best ways to have sex with your pets. As gross as it was, the users also posted links to porn sites that had human-animal sex. I'd been looking around for a couple of days when I came across an innocuous-looking link sitting quietly at the comments section, with the subject line, NSFW. At this point, I had already seen a woman have sex with a horse, so there really wasn't much that could surprise me, or so I had thought. The link took me to a video feed of a girl sitting in a chair with a countdown clock running at 11 minutes to 0. The girl looked sleepy, possibly drugged up, and she looked right at the camera, eyes half open. I had no idea what was going on. The website was minimalist, just a comment bar and no other frills. I tried typing something, but the website told me that I was a guest, and to leave a comment I had to sign up and pay $50. 5 minutes to 0, a man entered the room, started hustling furniture around. The comment section suddenly fired up. There was about 50 other users that were signed in, and they were all leaving obscene comments. The man came near the monitor, seemed to read something from it, smirked, and then he went back. It suddenly dawned on me that perhaps this was a live feed. As the countdown clock counted down to 0, Beethoven's Ode to Joy began to play in the background. The man came back on screen, this time with a Swiss Army knife. The comment section, in the meantime, was bustling with perverse comments. "Tear her shirt down," somebody had wrote. And in a moment, I saw the man slash through the girl's shirt, making her partially topless. "Spit down her throat," someone else wrote, and the man did so. Suddenly, the quantum of the incident dawned on me. There was this girl who was being tortured live for the viewing pleasure of a bunch of sick human beings. I almost felt like throwing up at that time. "Hit her ribs with a bat," was the next request. I watched in horror as the man pulled out a baseball bat from underneath the table, swinging it for her right chest, meanwhile toppling her over by sheer force of the hit. The girl howled in pain as the commenters typed in there, "Ha ha," and loved it. "She's got a perfect nose, let's break it," someone had typed in. "What happened to waterboarding her?" another one had typed. A chill had ran through my spine. Somewhere was this girl, locked away in a dungeon, possibly abducted from her family, and to be tortured on a live stream, and ultimately be killed at the end of the show. I closed all connections. My hands were still trembling as I proceeded to shut down my PC and take a walk to go get some fresh air. It remains to be one of the most unpleasant memories that I have. I can still hear her scream in my head as I type this sentence. I still have Tor on my computer, but I don't use the service anymore. I just figured that I was happy without it. It was last year when I thought of exploring the invisible web, deep web, and the dark web for the first time. I was really curious about it, being a computer science and engineering student, but I didn't know how to access it. So I searched for a little while, and then got the required resources ready. After entering the dark web, surfing for about 10 to 15 minutes, I found a web page with a lot of onion URLs. So I decided to come visit the random URLs, as there were hundreds of them. That time I had no idea that this could cost me a night's sleep. I visited the first one. It was a website selling drugs. I knew that I could encounter this type of stuff, as I have read about Silk Road during the research that I did about cryptocurrencies. Then I visited the second random URL. It was a website for hiring contract killers. All the killers were listed with their code names and their skills, kills, success rate, cost of hiring, and all that other stuff. They were all mentioned alongside. At this point, I had gotten a little nervous, but then proceeded towards the third random URL. This one took me to a website selling human organs, where various organs were listed, along with the base price, and one could enter the quantity and then order them for themselves. After that, the fourth one led me to a website teaching torture techniques. There are many videos in each torture technique of people belonging to different gender and age groups. These videos were too cruel to watch, and were hours long. In those videos, maybe the person or kid died in the end. I wasn't able to watch them all the way through. At this point, I was kind of feeling disgusted and took a break from my computer. Then after about 15 to 20 minutes, I proceeded towards the fifth random URL. It led me to a website featuring illegal and banned pornography. The next few URLs were pretty much the same. All the websites were featuring the illegal and banned porn and were requesting users to buy it. After this, I was thinking of exiting the dark web, but just thought to give it a last try. And if the next website also comes to feature the same content, I'll just quit. Then came the worst part. My next random link. It took me to a website which was teaching how to cook people, keeping them alive to the maximum extent. Not just this, but it had the different procedures to cook people based on their geographical location, age, gender, built, stuff like that. Along with that, there were videos attached in each procedure. I wasn't able to play any of them, as their thumbnails were disgusting as hell. I don't understand why anyone would want to do that. This thought had crossed my mind, and I quit the dark link. After this, I was traumatized for a few days. I have accessed the dark web many times after for research purposes, and not out of curiosity, but that was definitely the worst. I had once met a girl who made a very good living through a .onion site, where she would fulfill the sexual fantasies of people who had very graphic, violent, or dangerous paraphilias. Those would be impossible to realize without committing at least a sexual assault, at worst a violent rape, GBH, or murder, all of which would involve going to jail, or so for most people would remain a fantasy, because most people would A, not commit such an act on another person, and B, would prefer not to go to jail before seeing places on the sex offenders registry. Importantly, her early teenage years had been a litany of horrendous abuse, among with other things that she had witnessed. The sexual murders of two girls her own age. One was 14, the other one happened to be 15. As a result, she had a number of paraphilias that would be considered extreme. But the experience had also given her an enormous amount of insight. She realized that most of us don't have the choice about what we find arousing. One of hers including sexually aroused by the idea of her own death, specifically by her own public execution, which nobody in their right mind would choose as a sexual fantasy. However, she made it very clear and distinctive between having one and actually acting upon it. What she did was allow people to act on their less acceptable sexual fantasies with her as the willing participant. So nobody who wasn't 100% consenting would be involved. I asked her, who would honestly say they wouldn't be curious, what people requested. She said the most common fantasies were rape, choking, and other predictable things. She told me that she listed the more unusual scenarios on her website, along with the photos. People had requested everything from hanging to mock beheading, some of which were violent enough that she wondered if she was going to survive it, even knifing and impaling. So I would imagine stumbling upon her site would have been considered horrible, especially if it boasted a pretty graphic photo gallery with her being knifed, among other things. One thing that struck me was her lack of effect. Despite being unusually attractive, ridiculously intelligent, and very charismatic, she was very down to earth, and you certainly wouldn't imagine that she ran what was apparently one of the most mythical websites ever created. I'd point out that I still know her well, but she gave up on the business, and all it entailed after she did an impaling fantasy for a group of people, and nearly bled to death. A pretty disturbing story, told to me by the subject herself. Maybe she'll let me tell it someday. This was back before Google. Web pages were, for the most part, still very basic HTML with JavaScript. Hardly anyone used CSS. Only discussion boards and some banking sites had anything approaching mature front-end, back-end combinations. Like the early net, real deep web story, not just one about illicit activities online. I was browsing random blogs, GeoCity sites, and the likes, just going from link to link. Eventually I came upon an odd page. It appeared to be random thoughts from different people, but for the time, it was very well designed. The messages seemed to be cryptic in nature, like several people trying to pass secret notes. I started through the source, and hidden in the comments of a JavaScript were various IP addresses. I gathered up all the IPs in a text file and began enumerating. Some were routers with banner messages that I could telnet to. Also, all of at university. Warning, this is secure system at University of blah blah. The default Cisco credentials from back in the day worked on most of them, but I didn't poke around much. A few of the IPs were web servers with little to nothing to them, mostly Apache on Linux, or some BSD. At least one IIS server I can recall. I finally came upon a web server with a huge directory of HTML files and TIFF images, with a few smaller subdirectories containing the same. NSLOOKUP returned no reverse records for the IP address. A visual route traced it as far as Colorado. The HTML files appeared to be the record of a psychologist or similar mental health professional would keep. The images were of faxes, apparently of both military and medical nature. As I browsed from the subdirectory back to the parent, at the top was the new HTML file, named something like 1 hello there.html. The timestamp was from right that minute. I opened it up, and in plain text was the message, "We see you." No quotes, all lowercase. About 15 seconds later, the server suddenly dropped. I've spent pretty much every day of the past 4 years on the dark web. I'm a member of many of the black markets, the ones that sell drugs, hacking tools, stolen credit cards, and financial information, and actively participate in many of the forums. The truly horrible stuff on the dark web revolves around child porn, and worst of the worst are the hurtcore sites. The hurtcore sites are where the infamous Daisy's Destruction, a series of 3 videos depicting the torture of a toddler, once considered an urban myth of the dark web, were hosted. Unfortunately, they were not a myth. These sites, the most famous of which was called Hurt to the Core, were available to anyone, but to get full access, members had to prove that they were actively involved in hurting children by providing videos or pictures not available elsewhere. The highest level of access was the Producer's Lounge, where people would gather and produce videos to order. The owner, Lux, the most evil person on the dark web, he ran what he called a pedo empire, which was very popular with those type of people and others who enjoyed watching children get harmed. Lux was caught a couple of years ago, and in the same sting, the producer of Daisy's Destruction, Peter Sully, was also caught as well. Lux was recently sentenced to 17 years in Australian jail. Peter Sully is in prison in the Philippines for not only torturing Daisy, but facing murder charges of another girl of around 9 years old, whose body was found at his house. Most of the rumors claim Daisy was killed on film, and thus the only existing proof of a snuff movie. But she is alive and being looked after to this day.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.